Okay, so this is going to be a little talk sharing with those of you who are not up to speed on the story of Immunefi, how we came to be, where we started, why we started, what were the circumstances about that, which haven't totally been made public in a lot of senses, and then looking forward, how this is changing the industry, where we're going as a business, where crowdsourced security in crypto, which has become a really big thing, which is really exciting, is gone, where bug bounties are going. We're going to touch on all that because the world is changing so much from where it was 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's pretty transformative. And I want to give you guys that sneak peek so you can decide to get involved. Maybe you're running a project, you need security support. This is going to show you more of the tools that you have at your disposal. Maybe you're a hacker, you're about to see why it's better to hunt than ever. Maybe you're just curious to find out what's going on, how, frankly, crypto security is going to trounce the traditional standards for crowdsourced security in Web 2, where it's just so much better. I'm going to make that claim. You should be proud by the end of it, but we'll dive in. So, starting with history, because I love history, let's start with why we're building Immunefi. So in December 2020, we were really concerned about this hack apocalypse that was in potential. I had this hypothesis. DeFi was just beginning to rise. It was super exciting. I had my money in a lot of contracts, and I was like, how do I feel good about keeping, high double-digit percentages of my net worth in contract A, B, and C that may or may not be associated with a food coin? How do I come to conviction and personal security about this? And I quickly discovered I can't. It's not safe. It's not safe. We don't have good frameworks. We don't have good ways for thinking about this. And moreover, understanding the patterns that infected the ICO boom and how, let's just say, malicious personalities quickly got a hold of that, I quickly understood that there was going to be a rash of hacks. We didn't have a good security stack. We didn't have good policies. Things were really a mess on the DeFi front. And when hackers started realizing that, when malicious personalities started realizing that, it was going to set up this crazy mania of hacking of contracts. Now, this, of course, did occur. But us anticipating that, we need to prevent this. Otherwise, DeFi is going to be delegitimated. And if that happens, if we are too delegitimized, there will be no recovery. So our main goal at the start was just to prevent this hack apocalypse. Now, 3.5 years later, we see the outcome of that. We're at $100 million in payouts. Every single month, we're paying out millions of dollars in bounties. Sometimes that's on the lower end towards 2.6. In some months that has been, 6, 7, 8, $10 million. So it's been a pretty exciting time with the peaks. And this is just coming very, very steadily. Our system for preventing mass hacks has really worked. Just to compare, what this $100 million looks like, this makes us the second biggest bug bounty and crowdsourced security platform in the world, with the only one larger being HackerOne, which is the largest such company in the world. Okay? So that's just how big crypto crowdsourced security has become. Super exciting. And it's really worked, right? This is the key number that we were after to prevent. $25 billion, most conservatively estimated, in direct cash prevented from being stolen. We were successful in this. Had this not occurred, we might be living in a very different world where our industry might be much less popular, very unpleasant. We're protecting over $160 billion in user funds today. Bug bounties have been established. So it's easy to see today, oh, well, everybody's using a bug bounty, but that really wasn't the case years ago. Nobody was. In fact, they were kind of filthy, dirty tools that nobody wanted to run because it was such a pain to be a white hat and get screwed around by the company's lawyers because somehow they'd always answer the emails first. And on the flip side, to be the staff lawyer going, why are these people telling me there are things wrong with my product? I don't want to hear about it. That's what engineering is for. It was a mess. So we've really come a long way where most of the TVL in the industry is working on top of these. We've got 1,000 researchers that have averted on-chain theft of funds in various ways, which is just incredible. These are severe, high, and critical vulnerabilities only. And we've got almost 50,000 security researchers of all stripes, from newbies who are just getting started, just learning the ropes, to the most elite of the elites. This is pretty incredible because we all started from nothing. I remember in 2020, December 2020, I'm like, how many of my peers are in the industry? I'm like, I think maybe if we have 1,000 guys, that's probably the optimistic estimate industry-wide for really solid security talent contributing in an open way. And now, just on Immunefi, we're at 45K, and on various other platforms, we add tens of thousands to that. Super incredible. We should all be very proud. how we came to exist. Here we're going to touch a little bit about the core thesis, right? This is going to set the basics for thinking about where the future is going. So, years ago, we had this incredible security talent. This is those amazing 1,000 people, but there was no incentive to help one another. You did have random white hats doing things, like rescues like the Dow hack, or amazing SamCZ Sons and other kind of just really good faith actors getting involved, but that was basically charity. Okay, so our ecosystem at large was depending on charity to protect itself. There was no incentives, and the workflows for actually engaging in security work, crowdsourced security work, were horrible. It was a deeply unfun process. If you wanted to get, to make some money doing this, you had to become an auditor. No offense to my auditor friends, that's the holy grail, but that was the only option available. Now we knew, in terms of driving disclosure, only massive incentives could do it. See, this is the beginning of DeFi summer, right? We have MakerDAO starting to accumulate hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We have Aave starting to climb into the low billions. We have, all sorts of coins, all sorts of assets. We have compounds starting to grow. And we're like, shoot, what's the bounty size? Oh, $25,000 in a t-shirt. Oh yeah, this is gonna work out real good. Yeah, this is a good plan. Total rewards in the ecosystem. This also includes all centralized exchanges. So think Binance, think Kraken, great security teams there. But all of us together, $4 million. We weren't even offering as much as a mediocre enterprise identity platform in terms of security spend, ecosystem-wide. Kind of absurd. Our hypothesis is that if we really increase the rewards so that they match, that they had some relation to the amount of funds at risk, then this would drive and attract security talents in a big way. The security talents would go out, they would find critical vulnerabilities, and this would show the effectiveness of bug bounties, and people would be more willing to spend more on crowdsourced security in general as a result. This was our thesis, and it came true. Not only did it come true in driving bug bounties, of course now we're sitting at some pretty impressive numbers, which we'll talk on shortly, but it also helped stimulate investment across the security stack, which is another very exciting thing. Because when you see these bounty amounts, people are like, maybe I should invest preventatively. Maybe I should hire a security engineer early on in my talent plan. Maybe I should get more audits up front instead of just YOLOing and see how that works out for me. People did all sorts of things. And this cycle ended up being really critical in terms of driving the overall amount of investment in the space. In terms of validating that hypothesis, I did a bunch of research earlier this year and prepped a kind of a long review post on this catastrophe thesis, because it wasn't really public that we had these forecasts, and that drove a lot of Immunefi. Immunefi started to prevent disaster in the first place. So we wanted to get all that writing, kind of put that story out there so people understood where the business really started. And you can see this little blue graph. This is executed hacks. You can see this dark blue graph. These are max critical vulnerability disclosures on Immunefi. So not all, but typically most of these, because most of our customers are DeFi or blockchain protocols, almost all of these dark blue are going to be theft of funds vulnerabilities. And you can see that the dark blue matches or overtakes the light blue every single year. You can think of each one of these as another potential hack. These are not hypotheticals either, because these are vulnerabilities that made it to mainnet. These would not have been caught by audit. They would not have been caught by security tooling. Bug bounties were already the last line of defense. You can look at this graph and say, well, we could very easily have doubled the number of hacks. That's the amount of vulnerability that really existed, conservatively. Because in reality, there are also many more bugs that none of us know about today that have somehow made it through the years. Those things also exist. So it's actually worse than this, but what can we say? But now, the situation is very different. That playbook worked. That flywheel worked. Catastrophic losses and hacks are much rarer. When was the last time you guys heard about a $500 million hack? They are happening. They will happen. And eventually, the big $1 billion boy is gonna hit us, and it's gonna be rough. But looking back from 2020, 2021, it looked so imminent that these would hit and that we would be punished as an ecosystem. And we've really managed to dodge that bullet so far. And the result has been the growth, the dramatic growth of the DeFi ecosystem as a whole, and ultimately everything that our industry and security depends on, right? To service and to feed and to support this DeFi and infrastructure technology. And then eventually, if we're so blessed and if we work hard, a variety of other on-chain technologies that will follow on that infrastructure. Now the key thing in achieving this is this number here, $160 million in cumulative bounties available. So we went from 4 million as an ecosystem to $160 million just on Immunefi. And it's not just as low as this number. We have other competitors who are doing their part. Shout out to them as well. And they've got additional millions or tens of millions of dollars, I think in the realm of 20 or 30 million between all of them together. And that's pulling further weight and attracting more people from around the world, okay? So the numbers went from 4 million to near 200 million. Not quite 100x, but we're getting there, one step at a time. And that's been the thing that's driven this, right? These disclosures, they just weren't happening before. If you were around back then, the disclosures just weren't happening. It was just a drag. You knew that every time you decided to do a responsible disclosure, even if it was a critical vulnerability, you were kind of going out of your way to do someone a favor. And it was a pain. Like, you're kind of flipping a coin whether they're going to treat you real well or if the lawyers are going to beat you with a stick for doing a good deed. Rough. But it's working now. These incentives are actually and meaningfully driving the disclosures, and they're also driving the professionalization of bug bounties, and in a way that totally eclipses anything we've seen before. We're going to talk more about that later on when we look towards the future. And then critically, this disclosure cycle, when people realize, shoot, other than the cost of a hack, which is terrifying to my business, to my balance sheet, to my organization, to my culture, to my life, it's like I'm buying, every time I get hacked, I'm in hell for 6 months, cleaning up the mess, if you survive, anyways. But it also made people realize, okay, we need to be investing upfront. This was a hard-learned lesson in traditional tech. It took decades for people to realize, hey, maybe we should invest in security early in the stack before we set up tons of stuff and create this incredible and broad attack surface that nobody really knows the broadness and the scope of. We have dodged that bullet. Very early on in our history, we have realized that security needs to come early in the process. And it didn't just happen via bug bounties. Bug bounties, you can think of it as the rocket fuel that helps stimulate investment into all earlier parts of the stack. We've seen this explosion, starting from the end of the security stack, right, towards mainnet, and then moving gradually, slowly, to give you a bit of a broad map of what this means. We've seen big investment into bug bounty platforms, sure, but we've also seen the rise of audit contests, which has been pretty remarkable, right? And one of the biggest, in my opinion, probably the biggest driver of the audit contest pool sizes has just been everybody thinking, well, shoot, do I want to invest money in my bug bounty and pay out $1 million then, or do I want to pay more money now for a better audit? And so people have been doing that. It's driven tons of money into the auditing industry itself. So yes, just for commercial arrangements, obviously, yes, with projects getting multiple audits, sure, but also into new technology, new fuzzing technologies, new security tooling that auditors are using, new formal verification technologies in firms that just didn't really exist before, right? You had a smattering, runtime verification's been working on this for years, Sartori was kind of cooking something up, but now you have a whole suite of formal verification tooling you can use. It's incredible. That's being driven by people realizing, shoot, I really should invest earlier. This is also coming into hiring and the architecture of how we're building things. This is even starting to move into the layer one layer itself. As people think, well, shoot, maybe secure applications by default is a really important thing. You have layer twos like Fuel and various of the move systems that are all built around this type of value prop. Whether they'll work or not, we don't know. But that's how far this kind of invigoration and prioritization of security is coming along. What started with bug bounties, a very, last minute, last line of defense, when everything else fails, has fed into preventative medicine across the entirety of the on-chain security stack. Super exciting stuff. The hypothesis was right. We didn't understand how beneficial our approach would be, but that's what ended up occurring. But okay, we're a little bit more than halfway through, and let's talk about the future. We talked about the past. I think some of you who have been around for a while, been working, are probably all too familiar with this story, right? You were there, you were submitting bugs, you got in all sorts of trouble or shenanigans. Maybe you had some interesting negotiations yourselves, I don't know. But let's talk about the future and where things are going, because the industry is going to change in a material way, and I want all of your help in pushing that forward. And I think a lot of you guys should be proud by the end of this process, because we're really going to eclipse our predecessors. But give me a moment while I take some Coca-Cola, my breakfast. I have a friend who eats champagne for breakfast, so I'm going all in on Coca-Cola. Okay, what we're doing to raise the bar for on-chain security. Some time ago, I made the prediction that there was going to be billions of dollars in bug bounties. I think that's still true. Although on what timeline now, I'm not exactly so sure. But bug bounties need to expand and become so much more. In some ways, some of our sister firms in the industry have already demonstrated that bug bounties are becoming so much more. The crowdsourcing model works, and it works real well. People are applying it all sorts of ways. Obviously, the audits, the formal verification. I've seen it in terms of sleuthing content, like, okay, whatever, interesting. And I'm sure it will be applied more broadly. And crypto really lends itself to this kind of crowdsourcing activity. So it's going to be so much more. Yes, bug bounties, yes, the amounts are going to grow dramatically, but it's going to be more. And just a quick note, this kind of, $100 million, to put this into perspective, in addition to this being the kind of bigger than all other kind of bounty approaches in security combined, so like the bug bounty approach really works. The security pool, I'm pretty sure our numbers alone, but the security pool as a whole is also the biggest type of bounty as a standalone category, right? That is working as a product at scale in the ecosystem. I can't think of any others unless we want to include the various types of liquidity provisioning that are going direct to DeFi or direct to layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains. So this whole approach of crowdsourcing our way out of this, potentially catastrophic fault line of security problems in DeFi, it's really, really working well. And we have every expectation that it should scale 10x, maybe 100x from here as the on-chain economy grows with it. We will see. But let's talk a little bit about where things were. Bounties used to really suck. I described a whole bunch of ways to you already. It's even worse than that. It's like, every time you sign up to do it, you're kind of raising your hand to be punished for doing good deeds. Maybe you make some cash, maybe you don't make anything. Today, bounties work really well. We have all sorts of protections against this. We are, for example, standardize the hacker experience as much as we can across the stack. And we're constantly adding in layers that are improving the customer experience for hackers, most critically, and also for projects. For example, we've aligned most policies in terms of bug bounty program creation. It's a nearly standardized contract at this time, okay? With a very specific flow. It's not perfect, there are still things to improve, and we still have lots of outdated programs that we need to update and bring into the present day. But we have a system that's driving things slow. We built out things like mediations, okay, that further handle disputes. This is critical. This is a major reason why bug bounties suck in the past, but with mediations, we limit that problem. There have been many, 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 many cases where it looked like someone might have been ill-treated, and our mediations team, led by Adrian here, was able to step in and ensure that according to the terms of the contract, the Whitehat was properly compensated. And these amounts can be serious. In one of the most recent cases, it was a $2 million bounty where this occurred, up from 200K, the difference between a minimum critical and a maximum critical. These are life-changing amounts of money, and mediations is leading the charge to make sure people are well treated. But we're adding a bunch more. Let's talk first about Safe Harbor. We've been working with SEAL, the Security Alliance, which you should all participate in and join, might I add. But me trying to volunteer you all aside. We've been working with SEAL to create the first product implementation of Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor is an additional fail-safe, an emergency reserve, redundancy system for when active hacks are live to deputize and empower all of you who believe you can help to rescue funds and return them to a safe address, pre-specified ahead of time, and be rewarded for your good deeds. This is designed to prevent things like the Nomad Bridge hack. For all of those who are familiar with how that was a huge disaster, we blocked ourselves from participating in saving near $100 million because the Whitehat community was like, well, I'm sorry, but it's not my problem and I don't want to get sued. And they were right, and who can blame them? So we made it so we're going to make it your opportunity, not your problem, and we're going to prevent you from getting sued. That's what Safe Harbor is for. It's a new standard. We'll be spreading it across the ecosystem. It's going to create new ways to earn. For example, you're running an MEV bot. Well, you can participate. Under covered such addresses that are specified in Safe Harbor, your MEV bot can be looking for potential hacks. If you're running a security monitoring tool, we have some great partners who are coming up later today to talk about that. You can participate. Safe Harbor is going to give you a new way to learn. I should say earn, but you'll probably learn something too. It's going to open up a lot of different opportunities. Again, more ways for white hats to earn by doing good for the community, by creating value for the community, while strengthening ecosystem security, creating another line that's going to limit and hopefully push off a few more years that billion-dollar hack that's coming. Second, this is the first thing here, by the way, so you guys are all in the update first. We're launching Immunefi arbitration. So the biggest challenge with bug bounties historically, and indeed all crowdsourced security, has been the dispute process. The reality is there's no way to automate validation of vulnerabilities. Like, if you could predict what these things would be like ahead of time, you wouldn't have the bug bounty program in the first place. So you have to have human eyes deal with it. But people can dispute, as we gave in the example of the 200K or 2 million. And we have dealt with hundreds and thousands of such cases concerning many millions and tens of millions of dollars. It's a normal part of the process. These things can just be in the gray zone. If they weren't, we wouldn't need the bug bounty program. So we've created the world's first private court system for dealing with and resolving these types of international bug bounty disputes cheaply and quickly by default. This is something dozens of customers have already integrated on Immunefi, and many, many more are integrating. They recognize it's very valuable. It really simplifies and de-risks these negotiations for them. But it also really helps the white hat. These agreements are resolved in weeks to months and not years, which is the typical court case. They have a cost that is much, much lower than your typical court case. They are internationally applicable by default. If the arbitrator rules that this is how it's going to go down, it doesn't matter where their entity is. It's an enforceable agreement according to the international arbitration agreements. And so this is like our final line, along with our vault setup, along with our mediations team. This is our final end to the problems with bug bounty negotiation. The reality is it's just going to be clear contracts. They're well designed. There are good safeguards to make sure people play nice, and there's no room for bad actor projects or bad actor hackers, critically, to mess around. And the result of that, we think, will be this push to $200, $300, $400 million in bounties and beyond. We're expanding also into other forms of bug bounties. Our peers innovated on audit contests, and they're great, and we love them, and our customers want them, and the hackers want them. So we decided let's do them and let's do them better in the ways that our hackers are requesting. A little bit different from auditors, but I think what's stronger. We're experimenting with these right now. We have a whole bunch of boosts. We just recently launched the Fire Dancer one, the biggest one in the history of the Solana ecosystem, which is a $1 million contest. We have invite-only programs that we're experimenting with. We launched 2 more today with Shardium for a total of 700 grand in rewards. And we're running one of the biggest ever, a series of competitions for Fuel to kick off their launch for 1.3 mil. And guess what? We have an even bigger one, probably the most exciting one in the history of our industry. We're going to be announcing that on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Brussels time, so we hope you guys will be listening in for that, because it's going to be a pretty big deal and a great chance to make a name. And then finally, we're trying to transform how hackers hunt. So we've built your own reconnaissance partner and a little tool that we call Hakoon. It's a large language model product, but designed and geared around helping you deal with your reports, helping you find those vulnerabilities, being your spotter, not doing the work for you because it can't. But it can help embody, the wisdom and the learnings of top security researchers around the world and point you in the right direction, help structure that perfect report and get it over the line and do the things that you're weak at. It is your aide de camp, it is your adjunct, it is your supporter, it is your spotter, it is your recon partner. And then we have something else that's cooking that's gonna be able to show the amazing work that hackers have done all over the world so far, but we'll talk more about that in the weeks to come. We have HackerSync, but I'm gonna wrap up here because we're already over time. In conclusion, final call to action for you guys. We're transforming what it means to hunt. We're transforming what it means to earn in this field. 100x hackers, as we call them, are submitting incredible numbers of reports. It's getting easier, not harder to hunt, and they're earning shocking amounts of money by doing good for the ecosystem, and it's really helping everybody. It's working really well. And I want to invite as many of you guys as possible to participate in that. Nothing could bring me more joy than to make all of you as rich as I possibly can for doing good and making DeFi a safer place, because if we can succeed at that, then the on-chain economy has a real shot at becoming all that we hope and wish it to be. That's everything for me. If you want to roll with us, go to Immunefi.com, start hunting. If you want to work with us, we have the biggest and best security community in the industry. You can talk to us directly or email us at team@Immunefi.com. And I encourage you to follow us on Twitter to see what interesting things we cook up, because we have a lot more in the process, strange and arcane things that are going to do wonderful, wonderful things for the community. That's everything for me. Thanks, guys.